Hi, and welcome to Matt Holman Talks Mental Health, the podcast where I have the opportunity to sit down and chat to amazing humans about their journeys with mental health. For this episode, I'm so happy to introduce Louisa Downs to the conversation. Welcome, Louisa.
Hi, Matt. Thanks for having me. Great to see you.
You're more than welcome. Lovely to see you as well. As always, just a very quick introduction from me, how we got to this podcast recording. Louisa, I'll let you do a proper introduction, let people know a little bit about you and what you're doing, and then we'll get into the big conversation. So Louisa and I have known each other not for too long, actually, just for a few weeks, I guess, maybe a month or two. We got connected through social, and there's a wonderful story. We'll tell you a little bit about the story as we go through this as well. But it's great to hear from somebody like-minded around mental health, who's passionate about mental health, workplace mental health as well in particular. And yeah, it's just fabulous to have you on the conversation today, Louisa. So I'll pass it over to you, do a little bit about your introduction, let people know a bit about who you are and what you do.
Hi, everyone. So my name's Louisa Downs, and I'm a sports fanatic. I've always been passionate about health and well-being. From doing PGCSE at school, it's always the one at the front, putting my hand up, getting really involved. I've been a competitive swimmer, runner, and also triathlete in my time, which kind of led me on to being doing a sports science degree at university. And then I guess during that, we did a bit of psychology, which was always quite interesting from a sort of a sports perspective. But then when I graduated from university, I went into doing personal training and group exercise classes. And then from there, really, I've just kind of gradually moved further and further into the corporate health and wellbeing sort of scene, where more recently I've been a health and wellbeing program manager and mental health first aider instructor. So I always say that the delivery of the courses is always my favourite part of my job, because just having a random group of people come together to talk about something just so important and so relevant to everybody, and just seeing everyone bring their ideas, thoughts around the topic area and just sharing that learning, I just find like a really sort of magical setting. So that's kind of how I met Matt and how we got talking about how we sort of saw mental health and our thoughts and opinions around it. And then he invited me to come on the podcast. So I'm really excited to share my story today and talk to you all.
Brilliant stuff. It's lovely to have you on board for the podcast. And we can just say that, yeah, we're going to be working closely together in the future, I guess, and I hope as well. So, right, so we'll come to that a bit later. Louisa, the big story, your journey with mental health. As I always ask my guests, you define it as you will, you tell the story, but I'd love to know, and we'd love to know more about who you are, what you're doing, and why you've done it, and your passions and everything else. So we'll leave that with you.
Thank you. I guess the topic of mental health and where your journey starts, it's as you learn more about it, you probably realise that your mental health journey started actually quite a lot earlier than you probably originally thought it did. I especially I was born in the 90s, so I grew up in that sort of period where things were sort of changing a little bit. People were becoming a little bit more aware around poor mental health and how that impacts people. But it really wasn't talked about. I guess parents, for example, probably were a bit, maybe could see some things going on, but didn't really necessarily know how to tackle it. And I always think of like our parents and who we are. We were kind of like, we can only know what our parents have taught us before. So it's actually really quite challenging sometimes for us to maybe sort of expect our parents or other people around us when you're younger to know more about it. But actually, back then there was just very little education. So when I think back, obviously quite a lot of us have troubles in our teenage years, for example. We're growing up and our bodies are changing, we're having to progress through school exams, working out who we are, what we want to be, and all that pressure that comes with that. But I really want to start my journey and talk about kind of where I am today, and where I want to move forward with work and my career and things like that, by really talking about the last 12 months. So there might be points in this where I might pause for a moment just to recalibrate and just kind of make sure that I'm sort of checking in with myself, because all these events are quite recent. So it is all things that have happened pretty much to the day a year ago. So back 12 months ago, we were just sort of sat at home, about to go to bed, and we received a phone call. And I don't know whether anyone else feels like this, but when you get a phone call or a knock at the door, when it's you know, past like 9 o'clock, you're kind of a bit like, who's this? What could this be? And my husband sort of disappeared with his phone and walked away. And I thought, oh, he'll come back to bed in a second, like, and then it would just be going to sleep. But he didn't come up, and I was just a bit like, and I could hear him talking to somebody, and I was just a bit like, I don't know whether I want to go down and ask. I just got this like gut feeling that something had happened. And being upstairs, I was kind of like detaching myself from that, because I was able to go, I don't know what's happened just yet, but and so I don't know whether to involve myself. I don't know whether I want to. I don't know if I'm ready to, you know, I immediately assumed something bad had happened. So I went downstairs and found my husband crying, and I just kind of thought, what on earth has happened? And he just sort of, you know, some words muttered out of his mouth, and although it wasn't very clear, I knew exactly what he'd said. And it was one of our very, very close friends, a close friend where you kind of see as family versus a friend, just a friend, had been found dead. And with, you know, obviously a lot of emotions, a lot of shock, kind of almost that, what do you mean, you know, how, what, and there wasn't a huge amount of information. They were abroad at the time, and there wasn't really anything to really go by. It just didn't make sense. There was a lot of questions around that. And talking about I guess the emotions that we were feeling at that point was just that kind of, firstly, we didn't really believe it, and secondly was that kind of, that feeling of, I don't think until that point I'd actually truly experienced loss. Yes, we'd lost maybe grandparents or you know, other sort of older family members, but they'd always been of an older age, not somebody who's 31, the whole life ahead of them. And it just didn't make sense. So we were left feeling incredibly confused, but also that kind of feeling of, we don't know who to ask or who to talk to get that closure or to find out more, because it happened abroad, and they were, you know, there was an investigation going on, so we didn't really know anything about it. And for us, that probably still stands today. That kind of closure and that kind of understanding of what happened there is still a bit of a question mark to us, to be honest. There was a reason that was given. But I guess working in the world of mental health, you do think the worst. You're like, that, for me, that doesn't make sense. That might be the reason of death, but I don't fully believe that. And that is something that I guess, yeah, as I say, we're still dealing with today. And that kind of grief and that kind of losing someone who is a best friend, especially to my husband. So very, very close friend to him. And I'm sure he doesn't mind me saying too much, but you know, him, typically he's got maybe a handful of very close friends, and when you lose one of those people that you can talk to and relate to, they're such an important person in your life, and his life. So we were obviously left feeling very, very drained, very kind of like lots of questions, very confused, and we kind of went back into the work and we kind of got on with what we needed to do. We had a toddler at the time, and I was sort of 7 months pregnant, 8 months pregnant at the time. So a lot of hormones and all sorts of things going on, but we had other things to focus on. So we kind of saw, obviously, the light in kind of looking after our children and throwing our energy into that. And as, again, distraction can only work for a certain amount of time, but it worked for probably a good sort of 5-6 months, especially with some of the later events that had happened as well. So we were already feeling pretty rubbish about life and feeling quite like negative about things. And then probably about 10 days later, the phone rings again, and we're just like, okay, this is a bit strange. What could this be now? And my husband gets the news that he's got a startup business, and which he built from scratch, moved into this workshop, and we got this phone call to say that there was five fire engines trying to put out a blaze, so a fire that was then currently ripping through his workshop. And anyone who has a small business or has something that they've started from scratch, that kind of the blood, the sweat, tears, the finances, the emotions, the hours, like it's, especially in that beginning stage, you don't want it to be everything. You don't want it to take over your life, but unfortunately you are that person with different hats on and doing lots of different things to kind of, I guess, make it what it is. And yeah, my husband just then was like, had this phone call and was just like, okay, I'll be there straight away. And I only heard a little bit of the conversation. He was like, I've got to go. Something's happened to the workshop. So I jumped into the car and basically followed him and was like, strangely, my parents were at the same time, not sure what the reason, but thank goodness they were, because my mum just drove me straight there because I was just thinking, what's going on? Looked on the news and I'd heard that there was this big fire going on. It ripped through one of the units, one of the businesses there, but they were trying to stop it from making its way through the other businesses. And when we got there, we weren't allowed near enough to see what was going on. And then we ended up talking to the fire crew, and they basically were like, it's all gone. There's nothing left. There's like a hole in the ceiling where it was just too much of a big blaze. And we had helicopters putting water on it. It just, it's gone. And seeing my husband, who was already pretty struggling, probably more so than he was letting on, to then just see his business, his world, our future just burnt to a crisp. And I don't think anything can truly prepare you for the ongoing impact of that. He was a 31-year-old stood there in front of his business going, where do I even start? And I still to this day think that even people with a lot more business experience probably wouldn't have been able to do what he's done now with rebuilding it, ongoing battle with an insurance company, getting payments, getting the business back up, getting all the equipment, getting reset up in a new unit, with little sort of financial backing because of the battles with the insurance company. So that's, again, I was 8 months pregnant at this point, and I was just like, "Ooh, okay, this is tough." I don't know. I mean, through my life, I've always battled with a level of anxiety, and my way of kind of coping with that is planning, is knowing what's going on. And when you don't have that, when you don't have that thing to hold on to, and kind of going, I don't know how we're going to do this. And people just saying, oh, the insurance will pay out, it will be fine. But actually, at the end of the day, we didn't know what was going to happen there. And looking at my husband, who I would, looking back, I probably relied on his support way too much historically for that stability, for him to say, everything's going to be okay. He was then turning to me and asking, is this going to be okay? And I was like, I've got no idea. And my mindset straight away jumping to, catastrophizing and thinking the worst, especially with the loss that we'd experienced also in such a short period of time. Like it's when things start to happen negatively, it's very difficult. I've always been an optimistic person. I always look on the bright side. I always try and, I have maybe 24 hours of moping, and then I then go, right, this is what we're going to do. But I was struggling. I was like, and no one had any answers. No one knew what was going to happen, how this was going to pan out. So, we were dealing with that. It was very much just trying to rebuild everything and just try and work with this insurance company to see what money we could get back and blah, blah, blah. Meanwhile, I was then having to get extra scans because my bump was growing small, and I was thinking, oh my goodness, I'm stressing myself out too much. I need to relax. I need to just, really chill here, because it's having an impact now on the baby. Had a scan, it was actually all fine, but it was just a precautionary thing, and it did make me go, Louisa, like there's a lot going on right now, but you really, really need to start looking after yourself. And yes, your husband's stressed, yes, there's a lot going on, but actually you need to look after yourself and this baby, and obviously your toddler, they need to be your priority right now. And I just relate it to being, I've just got to put my big girl pants on and just crack on with it and just really try and just be strong, which I did. I was able to do, and you go into that sort of sense, that fight and flight mode, where it's very difficult to switch off from. You're very much like, each day turns into the next day, and you're very much running on a treadmill and trying to, be perceived as if you're coping and be, seem like you have it all together. At the end of that, I'm a mental health first aid instructor. I should know what to do. I should know how to look after myself. And I thought on the surface I was doing really well. I thought, actually, and my mum kept saying, I'm so proud of you, you're doing so good. And I was like, am I? I don't feel like I am. I'm like, this is really hard. Yeah. So anyway, then this was October, end of October, November, December, we were going to Christmas. That was a really lovely distraction. And then we had the baby was due in January. So really was throwing all my energy into this baby, and everything was going to be okay. We had the support around us, everything was going to be fine. And we, again, the phone rings. What is with phone calls? The phone rings. And we're actually in Dunelm with my mum, with my husband. We were on our way to the memorial service for our friend, and randomly in Dunelm, don't ask why, just did a bit of shopping. Yeah. Why not? And I look over at my husband and he's crying. My husband doesn't cry. This is just, no, again, not, he just never cries. And I've seen him cry twice in the last couple of months, which I think is, obviously I don't want him to cry, but also amazing that the fact that he could get that emotion out. I was almost like, that's a good thing, right? But I was like, what's happened now? And Harry just said, I can't say it. And I was like, what's happened? And my mum was like, so our childminded baby had just died. She'd had a baby and died within hours. And I was just like, I don't know what's happening to this world. Like, what is happening to the world around me? Like, this is just becoming really, really hard. The one thing I was looking forward to was having my baby, and I've now had this, which again has completely thrown me. Like, giving birth is terrifying anyway, and then having that happen, I just was, my anxiety just went through the roof. And the fact that my husband was, I just don't know how to tell Louisa. I just, like, she's already really nervous about this. I just don't know how to tell her. But I guess you get to that point where you've got so many things that are stressing you out and that have impacted you. Yes, it impacts you, but then also you then become a bit numb to it. You become a bit kind of, there's only so much my body can take. There's only so much stress my body can take. I just don't know what to do with all this emotion. So I just compressed it and was just like, it's not me. It wasn't you. It's very, very sad for them. It's not you. It's not going to happen to you. It's going to be okay. But then, lo and behold, I had this amazing birth, had this baby, was like, this is our gift. I'm not really like a religious person or anything like that, but I was like, this is our present. She's amazing. Had a brilliant birth experience, and I was like, yes, things are going great. This is great. And then you never guess what, something else happens. It just feels like it's never ending. But this is the last thing, I promise. Thank goodness. But yeah, so it got to day 8. As anyone who's had a baby or supported someone who's had a baby, it's wonderful, but also it's hard. The sleepless nights, the hormone changes, the stress of reminding yourself how to look after a tiny baby, whilst also having the toddler, whilst grieving a loss of a friend, whilst my husband being very, very stressed about the business situation, worrying about money, worrying about how we were going to afford the house. We've got bills to pay, and when one of your incomes completely goes, and the other's about to go on maternity leave or is on maternity leave, that's pretty stressful. But it got to day 8 and we'd had a really bad night of feeding. So I was breastfeeding, and I was just like getting really frustrated with how she just wouldn't feed. And I was just like, what's going on? Don't know what's happening here. Kept trying, tried it with a bottle. She just really slow feeding. I was like, okay, this is a bit odd, but we've got a midwife appointment in the morning, so I'll just take her along there. We'll just see, you know, how she is in the morning. Like, she has fed before. It's not like she's not starving. She's okay. We'll take her to the midwife and see what they say. So I took her in and was just like, stripped her down, because they stripped them down to weigh them. And then I started talking about how, oh, I'm really worried about the feeding, actually. Can I get some help? Would you be able to help me? Just show me today, see if there's anything I'm doing obviously wrong. And the woman was like, oh, Rose is feeling quite cold. And I was like, well, it's January, it's pretty cold. And they're like, okay, let's just check her temperature. And temperature wasn't measuring very well. And they tried a different thermometer, and that wasn't working either. And they were like, yeah, let's just check we're going to get the other midwife in and just have a look at her. And anyway, they did a few tests on her, and they were just like wondering what was, she just wasn't very responsive. And they were like, has she been like this for very long? And I was like, I just sort of froze. I was like, what's going on? Yeah. And they were like, we're going to ring an ambulance just to be on the safe side. And so I was sat there going, what? Like, yeah. I was just going for a routine checkup. How did I not notice? Like, I'm a really bad mother. Like, have I been so distracted and with everything that's going on that I didn't notice that my baby was struggling? Really quite like just sat there. And then when they rang the ambulance, I was just, obviously COVID-y times, had my mask on. I was just sobbing behind my mask and just going, I just felt like I was just falling into this big sinking hole. Like, you don't want a very close friend to die. You don't want a business to burn down. But especially with the business thing, it's just stuff and it's just money. Yeah. Obviously a friend is very different, but I was like, what is happening to the universe? Don't mess with my baby. Do not mess with my baby, because I will, that's going to really make me go into, like, I don't know, this mad state. I'm not really sure. Yeah. So anyway, they rushed her off to the hospital, and we had a good few days where she was in incubator, and they were like, we just don't know what's going on. We don't know what's wrong with her. Had this very well-known consultant come over, and I just, again, 10 days postpartum, just like absolute a shell of myself at this point. And I had not gone home at this point. I'd stayed literally by her bedside the whole time. And the consultant said to me, I don't know which way this is going to go. And I just remember him saying that so vividly and being like, I had so many questions, but nothing came out my mouth. Like, I should have said, like, what do you mean by that? Can you just clarify? My mind is thinking the worst right now. Do you mean the worst? Should I be preparing myself? Like, what's going on? And he was just like, yeah, we're gonna, because she was on oxygen and stuff like that, we're gonna have to up her oxygen. We don't really know what's happening here. We're gonna have to give it a few days and just see, and hopefully one of the tests, they were then talking about doing like brain scans, heart scans and stuff like that. And you just sit there and you just don't know what to do. And at this point, my parents were back down again, and my mum came and picked me up from the hotel. She was, the hospital, yeah. And was like, you need to come home, you need to get your change, you need to have some food, and then we'll go back later. And I looked at my mum, who's a nurse, and I just said, kind of looking for that reassurance, and just said, I don't know, Mum, but I've got this really horrible feeling that I think she's going to die. Like, with what's happened to us, nothing possibly good is going to happen now, because somewhere, I just suddenly felt like I deserved all this. Like, I'd done something so bad previously. I don't know, always thought I was quite a nice, nice person, always trying to do good. Like, what on earth have we done to really deserve all this? And I just thought, she's going to die. And that moment in time, I just literally, again, I've always been an optimistic person. I've always been able to help myself. I've always been very pragmatic about stuff and going, do you know what, I'm struggling right now, or physical health isn't very great right now. I know what I need to do. I need to do this, this, and this to make myself better, and I'll be fine. It's probably the first time in my life that I've ever sat there and went, I don't know how I'm going to come back from this. I just don't know how I'm going to be able to bounce back. And that was just me initially. And then I looked at my husband and I was just like, well, there's no hope for either of us, because we can't support each other now, because we're just both just so in this rock bottom state that we just don't know how to get ourselves out of it, which is just so unlike me. And I think what happens sometimes when you're in that state, of course, you should be connecting with people. You should be, talking to friends, getting that help there. But I would have people message me or people wanting to talk to me. I just completely shut them out because I don't want to explain to that, because I was like, how could you possibly understand what was going on? And in that, and I feel like for myself, whenever I'm really struggling, I do that. I close off from people because I can't face talking to people about it. And I know that's not what you should be doing. And I was just beating myself up about it. I was like, come on, Louisa, you know what to do here. Like, just try and have that out of body experience of looking in and kind of going, this is what you need to do to look after yourself right now. I just didn't have any capabilities of doing that. But months go by, probably should say she's absolutely fine now. The doctor came in and was just like, they did a lumbar puncture on her, and they were like, oh, she's got meningitis. This is great news. And I was like, what? How is this good news? But they were like, we know how to treat this. She's going to be okay. And I was like, and in that moment, I was just like, that just gave me that hope that no matter how small it was, it was that hope. And that's what we try and give people, right? When things are really hard, is we try and give them hope. But when other people around you don't know what's going on, they don't know what's going to happen, no one can really give you that. And you looking for it. And that's why we did end up not talking to people about it, because no one could make it better for us at that time. No one could give us that hope. So it was almost pointless having that conversation. Well, it felt pointless having that conversation, where actually probably would have helped. But anyway, coming back from hospital, kind of, I guess for myself, relearning having trust in myself of being a mum again, and because I felt like one of my initial things was I didn't notice that my baby was unwell, but actually, that's probably a side thing there. Like, that's not true. I had to go through quite a lot of reflection in that time. Good reflection, and maybe some points where you are sat at home with your baby, kind of maybe thinking a bit too much. It's quite isolating being on maternity leave on your own at times, especially after what we'd experienced. So so I guess I spent the first sort of probably 5 or 6 months actually just being a mum, just trying to enjoy it, and just trying to remind myself that everything will fall into place with time. It's just, everything just needs a bit of time. And then I was really looking forward to this holiday that we had coming up in August with everyone from my family. And I just kind of thought, you know what, this is going to be all the family together. Like, I can just be 100% myself. If I'm not feeling great, that's fine. I'm around loved ones. It's going to be a really lovely situation. And I don't know whether anyone else does this, but you kind of have a 2-week break and you think, I almost put a lot of pressure on it to be like, this is going to be super relaxing. It's going to be really great. I'm going to use this as like my healing 2 weeks. And when I come back, I'm going to be ready to go back to work, and I'm going to be my usual self. I'm going to be normal Louisa again, optimistic, passionate, like up for challenges and all that sort of thing. And it got to like day 4 of the holiday, and I was like, I don't know if this is working. Like, am I getting where I need to be? I tried to do everything like I know, like, meditation. Got back into doing a bit of running. Tried to do eat well, not drink too much alcohol, go to bed early, play with the kids, like do everything that I feel like is good for me and keeping me happy. And my sister, I was talking to my sister about something, and she said something which I can't even remember what it was, but it really like hit a nerve with me, and I just like attacked her with my words. Like, I was really quite nasty. And she was like, whoa, like, Louisa, I'm scared to say anything to you these days because you're quite aggressive with how you answer something sometimes. And it was in that moment where I went, I thought I was doing okay, but I don't think I am. I think I think I've still got some work to do here. Understandably, like, I think, I totally recognize that we've been through a lot, and I totally understand we're not going to feel great straight away. So we went for a walk, and she's a social worker actually, so she's quite used to doing kind of, not that she has diagnosed me or diagnoses people. But she was like, look, you've had a lot of trauma, like a lot of things that have put you into that fight and flight mode. You're obviously incredibly stressed still. I think you need to go and access some counselling. I think that would help you. And the comfort that I got from her saying that to me, I think I had just cracked on, put my cape on, was like trying to be superwoman, super mum, and was like, everything's going to be fine, trying to really fight being the Louisa that people know and people love, hopefully, and being that person that I always kind of associate myself with. I was like, it was just really lovely for somebody to acknowledge what had happened and went, you know what, Louisa, you warrant help here. Some people might be offended by that, by someone saying you need help. Not me. I was just very much like, actually thanked her. And after that point, I then kind of thought, you know what, I know I need to do 3 things. And my 3 things is quite nice because it's quite like a number that is quite doable. And if one of them doesn't necessarily work, then you've got the other 2 to fall back on. But I was like, I knew I was going back to work. I knew I needed to do something with my energy that I have and my passion around health and well-being. I needed to, although I was sort of doing that at the time, I needed to do it in a way which was really going to make an impact, that where I was really going to help, hopefully make a difference, especially with spreading the word about mental health. Now, I was already delivering mental health first aid courses anyway, but I really wanted it to be the centre of what I was doing, because you can have all the tools under the sun, but when people don't know enough about mental health, and when people don't know enough about how to help you or how to guide you to that support, it took, and it's no judgment or sort of like, to all my friends and people who have helped me along the way, it probably was that I was at the right stage on that holiday to accept help at that point. That conversation might have gone a bit differently. If it had been another time, I might have brushed it off and gone, no, I'm not ready to do that. But it felt right at that point to get that help and look at counselling. So I really wanted to make a difference with work. And I thought, I need a new job. I need to find something which I can go back to, which I can make a difference and actually help people, like really help people, and to also be more authentically myself as well, because of the journey that I've been through. And actually, old Louisa, it's not necessarily that old Louisa's gone. I'm like probably a more mature, grown-up version of myself now, where those life experiences have probably shaped who I am. But probably, obviously I don't wish any of that to have happened, but you do grow from it, you do change from it. It changes your perspective on a lot of things. And that was one thing, that was one of my 3, was to find a new job. The second one was to obviously access some professional help. So so lucky to have an EAP provider that I could have access from. So called them up, and literally that week had a phone call. The next week I had my assessment with a psychologist, and then the week after that I had my first counselling session. So someone was looking after me, and someone was there listening to me, not making any judgments, doesn't know me, doesn't know my husband, doesn't know my family, doesn't know any of us, and I can just talk and just say what I need to say, get some support with that, and then work on a few things, and then have another session the next week. And it's been, I've had counselling before, so I'm a big advocate for it, but I just love it. It's just it just feels like I'm actually looking after my brain, and I'm trying to then make sure that I'm a good, mum, colleague, friend, and I that's why I want to be. I want to be at that point where I can be back and look after people around me and still be able to give as much as being in this little bubble that I've been in. And then my last one was to start doing some more regular exercise again. So get back into running, because it's just, anyone who runs, the endorphins, that time to yourself, like having a family, having young kids, having, a job and all these other things, although lovely and great to get your mind into stuff, it's just that time that you have on your own to listen to music, to just shut off and just kind of get the endorphins running around your body, just it's just so good, and it makes me happy. So it's kind of going back to one of those things where you're like, this is going to be good for me because I know this has helped me in the past as well. So it's something that I've enjoyed from the past. So
brilliant.
and it helps me to remind myself of who Louisa is, and it's very much that identity thing, doing the running. So I'd like to say I've actually been able to do all three of them, which that's the old Louisa approach of finding those things that I need to do and then cracking on with it and doing and actioning those things and doing something about it. So, I'm pleased to say I'm in such a better place now. I'm able to look at things and be able to have perspective and to have hope and to know that actually things are going to get better. Whereas, I don't know, even 10 months ago, probably that was just, I couldn't even think about this time and coming back to work or anything like that. So it's been a big journey, but I'm happy to say things are a lot better thanks to those three things.
Oh, that's amazing. I've just loved sitting back and listening to you talking about your experience. And as I always say, I love that you've been, you can talk about them. I don't love you've been through them, so it's always, let's be very clear. I'm not saying I wish everybody went through really bad and traumatic experiences, but thank you for sharing everything that you have. And you did three things. So you changed a few things in your life. And I think we can say safely that the one that you didn't really talk too much about was changing jobs, right? Would you like to tell anybody why you didn't talk about that?
It probably leads in very nicely that Matt was looking for a new person for his team on this trip in France. In fact, I applied for it because I thought this fits in with where I see my life going and what I want to be doing. Very, very strange that it appeared. This opportunity came up when I was needing it to help me move forward and to have a fresh start with things. And very pleased to say that Matt decided that he would like me to join his team, which was
brilliant.
I'm
really excited. We're really excited to have you joining as well, Louisa. And it's almost like there is an alignment here in a couple of things, because earlier this year we had another amazing colleague join us, Kerry. She joined during Mental Health Awareness Week, actually. So her first day was the first day of Mental Health Awareness Week. You're joining on the 10th of October, which is World Mental Health Day. So it almost feels like, there's a reason that these things happen, I believe. And I'm a strong believer in a lot of that as well. And we're really excited. People may hear this after World Mental Health Day and they'll know you already joined the company. So it's not like the biggest surprise in the world of everything. But you know what? I love the fact that you're talking about your journey, you're talking about your experiences, and that's why we're so excited to have you join. So Louisa's going to be a part of Simpler, and long may it continue and we grow together and work together and collaborate together. But it's been amazing.
Thank you, Matt. Some of that, it feels strange sort of telling that story again. It's a very long story, so if you're still listening, thank you for sticking with the story. But it's just the reality, and somehow things can sometimes come in threes, sometimes in life random things can happen. But and if you know people who are going through something and there's been a couple of blows that they've experienced, you might think that they're not telling you about it or they're not talking to you, but actually it's probably because they're shutting themselves off a little bit because they're just dealing with just so much. So it's just that importance of actually, even if somebody's not replying to your messages, is to still keep trying and still remind that person. Even the text that I'd received saying, "Hi Louisa, I know you've got a lot going on right now, just want to make sure you're okay." I knew that someone was thinking of me, even though I didn't reply and I didn't really want to talk to them at that point. It was still that kind of that kindness and just reminding you that you do have people around you and that you do have help and support.
You definitely do. I think that's a wonderful way to end this as well. And as you were saying that as well, I was thinking about the fact that you're going to go back to activities and running, and we do love to run within Simpler, as many people will know from watching us on social media, with more running events in the pipeline coming up soon. So Louisa, thank you so much. Just want to send all the best to you and your family and your wonderful little children, and obviously the support around you with your parents and everybody else. So just want to send you all the best. Thank you so much for sitting down and recording this with me. It's almost like a part of the job now. If you join Simply, you have to do this way. It's almost like a mandatory requirement, because I'd well to know who you really are, and that's the key. So
100%. Thank you so much. It's been you're so easy to talk to, so
thank you.
It's been great. Thank you.
Brilliant stuff. Have a great weekend, and I'll see you soon.
Bye.